It's slightly hot as always, but welcome back to the Exodus Collective with me, Zoe Smith. It's a pleasure to have you back on board as we talk about you and making your move to the Caribbean. Earlier this week, I was in conversation with someone who was trying to narrow down which island to move to. We were talking about Grenada and the ins and outs of life on the island. And one of the questions which came up, which is something that I haven't addressed on this channel before, is ease of access. What's it like to move around Grenada? Is it walkable? Do you need a car? Can you rely on public transport? And that was a topic that I just wanted to delve into in a little bit more detail today, because it's a topic that I think is actually quite relevant, and it's one that I'm really keen to address. So for me personally, Grenada isn't an island that I would consider relying on public transport for. Thousands of people do. There are buses that will definitely take you from one end of the island to the next and across. But for me personally, there's so much of the island to explore, and areas that just aren't accessible by bus routes, that relying solely on public transport really means that you're missing out on being able to travel to so many really interesting places. On top of that, the hours that the buses run, if you're coming from a metropolitan area, there's just no comparison. Like in the UK, in London, you'll have 24-hour tube lines running on a variety of lines. Bus services generally typically run through the night. But off in Grenada, past 7 p.m., getting a bus is going to be tricky in particular areas. So again, if you want that freedom to move, to be where you need to be, having access to your own vehicle really does make a difference. On top of that, at the weekends, yes, on Saturdays you'll be able to access transport, and on Sundays there's typically very little in terms of movement of buses. So again, that one day of the week where you just want to kick back and relax on the beach or go hang out with friends and family, if you don't have the means to travel around, then that's going to make it a little bit more tricky. It's not insurmountable. I think folks are often quite willing to share and to give you a ride, but I think it's really important just to be upfront that that is the situation that you'll be working with when it comes to the options relating to public transport. So the next option, I guess, is taxis. So to move from taxis to buses, you're having quite a significant leap in terms of the cost. Typically, a taxi is what you would take in terms of getting from the airport to your accommodation, and definitely in times of the pandemic, that's pretty much the only option that you're allowed to use in terms of making that transfer. In order to reduce community spread, it's literally only licensed taxi folks who are allowed to do that mode of transport of getting you from the airport to wherever it is that you need to stay. So absolutely making sure that you have money with you for when you arrive in order to pay your taxi is really important, because I only recently found out that there is no ATM at the airport, which is slightly unusual. I've never been to an airport without an ATM. You would imagine that, folks leaving or arriving and needing to access cash would probably be a no-brainer, but for whatever reason, according to what I've heard, there is no ATM, there is no functioning ATM at Maurice Bishop International Airport, so please make sure that you do either come with EC dollars, Eastern Caribbean dollars, or US dollars in order to be able to pay your taxi to get you to wherever you need to go. Also in and around St. George's, whether it's the capital or Grenada, again, taxis will be on hand to move you around. Quite often it might mean ordering something from the restaurant or hotel or bar that you're at. Typically, as far as I'm aware, it's not really that easy to hail a taxi down in the street in the way that you would in London or any other major city. So making sure that if you call to book a taxi, that's typically the way forward. And as far as I'm aware, there is no Uber service in Grenada. So being able to book something on your app also is not so much of an option. So if you're not going to book a taxi, if you are not going to use public transport in the form of buses, what else is there? Well, hiring a car is typically the way in which many people choose to get around. I have to be honest, I think car hire in Grenada is exceptionally overpriced. If you're used to hiring cars in the US or in Europe, what you get for your money, there's no comparison. Typically, I think you're looking at spending around $50 per day for car hire, and we're not talking like a super fancy vehicle. We're talking like a normal 4x4 that probably isn't brand new. So yeah, for those who own cars or were thinking about going into the car rental business in Grenada, let's be a little bit fairer with our prices and understand that folks who are traveling internationally probably do have the ability to compare whether they're getting value for money. And just because folks need to be able to travel around doesn't mean that we should take advantage and charge exorbitant prices. That's my little rant over. For those of you who are looking to stay longer term, one of the options that I've used in the past is to reach out to the folks who typically rent vehicles to medical students at St. George's University. So those students are typically here for at least 3 terms, so that they'll be renting cars for a much longer period. And as a result, the folks who rent to them rent at quite a reduced rate. So I would say somewhere around $300 to $400 US a month, which I don't know how that compares to where you're renting, where you typically travel if you're looking to do a longer term lease. But compared to the day rate, the tourist day rate, it's a huge saving. From my experience, you can get those sort of rates if you're looking to stay for at least a month. But absolutely, I think that's one way to save money when it comes to being able to afford car rental, because if you're doing upwards of 50 US a day over months and months, that's just going to be an insane amount to be spending just on transportation. The other thing to consider when you are looking to drive in Grenada is accessing a license. So for me, as a UK citizen, I have my UK driver's license, which is a photo card and it has a piece of paper attached to it. Last year, there was an update suggesting that folks would be able to apply for more government services online, one of which was applying for your driver's license. So if you click on the government website or even just type in Visitors Driver's License Grenada, it will take you to this website. So scroll down the page, get the information. What does it say? Visitors Driver's License. Foreign visitors apply and obtain temporary driver's license. US, Canadian, British, and OECS nationals are exempt for a visitor's license. Now, I guess that's open to interpretation, but exempt for a visitor's license seems to suggest to me that perhaps using the license that you have might be okay, but I guess it's open to interpretation. So having shown you that, so the information is there in black and white, the situation when it comes to what's required for foreign travelers, you can imagine my surprise when getting stopped, I can't even remember why, by a police officer somewhere in St. George's and being asked my license. I explained, I checked out the government website. This is a situation that it states it's a case for British, US, and Canadian driver's license holders, and being told, well, I know nothing about that. That isn't the case. You need to go and apply in person. So I kindly noted what he said. I reflected upon that. I went back and checked the website just to make sure that I wasn't going crazy, and left it as it was. A few days later, I went to the port to pick up a barrel. On the way in, at the security gate, there was another police officer, and he asked me about my license. I don't know why. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but he asked me about my license. Again, I explained the situation. The web says X, Y, and Z, and he said that that's not the case. So my friend who I was with said, listen, this is the second time this has happened. There's no guarantee that the third person you speak to is going to be as lenient and isn't going to give you a fine. Why don't you just go down to the fire station, check out what's what, and make sure that you're clear as to what the situation is. To me, that seems slightly ridiculous because as far as I can say, as far as I can see, what's on a government website is information that I feel that I can work with. That is what I take as fact. But anyway, just in case I got pulled over with him and I didn't want to have him saying, I told you so, I was like, listen, cool, let's go, let's sort it out. So I walk into the police station, which is attached to the fire station, which is on the Carronage in St. George's, so it's really, really easy to find. And I go in and I explain the situation. So the policewoman says to me, oh yeah, you're not the first person that we've had coming in telling us that. People have come in and printed off the information and shown it to me, but we haven't been told anything about these regulations. And as far as we're concerned, we're the people who are responsible for implementing what the status quo is. So ignore what's on the website. You do need to come here and apply for a license, and without a license, you're going to be running a risk of being in trouble. So I paid my money, they filled out the form, and I now walk around with my license firmly attached to me just in case. But again, it's just one of these quirks of life in the Caribbean, life in Grenada, what you would take as logical or sensible is not black and white. Quite often it's colored by your own experiences. And that's one of the adjustments that you learn how to make. To me, it doesn't make much sense, but whether it makes sense or not isn't really the point. You just do what you need to do in order to make sure that you're staying on the right path. And in a way, that sort of approach is one that I would advise you to take when it comes to driving in Grenada. Huge respect to my fellow Grenadians out there who drive incredibly difficult roads. But the driving here it's unique, it's different, and I think especially for folks from the US who are used to driving on huge straight highways that just go in one direction, there are a number of folks who are far better drivers than me who refuse to drive in Grenada. I think one, because as I said, the roads are very different, they're very narrow, very windy, very hilly. Quite often you're going along steep cliffs that are close to the sea edge, and that can be very unnerving for folks who are used to having 5-lane highways to drive on. But also the approach to driving here is different. The sort of, okay, it's a narrow road, I'm going to go slowly, doesn't always take place, especially if you have a bus behind you. Quite often they'll be going super fast and want you to go incredibly fast. My approach is to just let them overtake me. But yeah, that thing of thinking, okay, I have rights of way, therefore this person should X, Y, or Z, that doesn't always happen. And I think if you are the sort of person who's prone to road rage, Grenada is not going to work out well for you, because sometimes you just have to, okay, take a deep breath and let it go, because yeah, the rules here or how it plays out in practice is kind of different. But all of that being said, I still highly advocate driving in Grenada. Some of the views that you see are just absolutely stunning. The places that you can get to by driving up mountain roads and finding old estate houses or old forests or anything that the island has to offer that isn't immediately visible from the main road is so worth the effort. It's often very hard to get lost in Grenada. I mean, you can often take a wrong turn. But folks are generally so willing to help you out in terms of giving you directions, because often it can be like, the place that you need to go to is the place by the red mango tree. Okay, which mango tree? But folks are super helpful, really friendly, better than Google Maps in some ways, and helping you to find places off the beaten track. So despite all the hassles, despite the differences to where you are no doubt coming from, driving in Grenada is something that I would highly recommend. And what else? Also, that friendliness of people can also be very useful when it comes to parking. Grenadians are always very willing to help you park, perhaps especially if you are a woman and as useless as I am when it comes to parallel parking, reverse parking, any sort of parking. Perhaps because the roads are so narrow and curved, folks understand that often you kind of need some help, and folks will really be willing to come out and say, like, come back, stop, turn your wheel that way. So again, driving or parking can often be like a community sport, but yeah, that support is there, and it's worth dipping your toe in and trying out driving here, because I think the benefits that come from it are really quite spectacular. Um, so that's pretty much it. I hope that gives you a bit of an idea as to what driving in Grenada can be like, the processes that you need to go through if you do want to get a license. Those three are the main places to apply for your license. If you're renting a car, you can get your license via your temporary license, which lasts for up to 3 months, via your rental agent. If you are looking to do a longer term hire via the people who typically rent to SGU students, from my experience, you would need to apply for your own license. That's not something that they do for you. But yeah, hopefully that gives you an overview. If there are any specific details that you want from me, definitely feel free to book a session, and I'm happy to talk you through any other areas in more depth. But I hope that helps, and look forward to seeing you on the road here in Grenada sometime soon. Take care.